as superheroes continue to drive Hollywood's king mad, get it, the Mad King? I would say that House of the Dragon, and therefore, by extension, Game of Thrones, proves that it ain't just the cape set, it ain't just superpowers that can deliver the spectacle and complex storytelling that today's audiences crave. You know, dragons and all that. Thank goodness this show has dragons. I think that's really the ticket. But, I mean, that's what makes House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones able to compete at a modern level. But I think the true cornerstone of this show's success, which was, I think, where House of the Dragon really excels, even more so than Game of Thrones ever did, is that it borrows a page from the complex soap operas that have captivated audiences for as long as television has been around. We're talking about I, Claudius, Upstairs, Downstairs, Dallas, The Crown. Even I think Succession falls in this category, but because it doesn't have dragons, it took a while for everybody to discover it. And there are many shows that also follow the same path. You could argue Yellowstone is also cut from the same cloth. But then, as I said, when you add dragons to that already very successful formula, well, then you have something that can compete with superhero fare. What a thrilling episode. And there was, in addition to all the dramatic intrigue, there was still a lot of great explosive moments and surprises. It's so great to be surprised. We live in an age of spoilers. I'm trying to, navigate that in a way that's best for you and me. And I know that a lot of this stuff for House of the Dragon has leaked on Reddit, but luckily those leaks have not gotten to the point where, it forces our hand to discuss them. When they're everywhere, you can't ignore them. But, as long as they stay like in just the dark corners of the internet, you can have fun and be genuinely surprised. And I leapt out of my seat with that ending here with Rhaenys as a mere tease of Rhaenyra's revenge. Oh, that was just incredible. That was just Game of Thrones. That was a Game of Thrones moment. And we're going to talk about the feet. That was also quite the surprise. But as I said, the quieter moments were really incredible in episode 9 as well. And I think we came to better understand the Greens and what type of person is most desirable to rule. I had an epiphany watching this episode, which I can't wait to share with you. So let's start there before we get to the juicy stuff. All right, so I think what moved me the most this episode was the masterful character development for Aegon. We really got to know Viserys, and he went from being a fool to being a really interesting and complex character. And if they can do the same with Aegon, well then bravo, that would be fascinating. I think I came to actually understand him, as I said, a little bit better, and perhaps even feel a little bit sorry for him. He's still done absolutely horrible things, but I did start to understand what motivated him. So when the episode starts out, he's missing, right? And as Otto and Alicent, both eager to have influence over the new king, they send competing teams to search for him, like he's a crazy challenge on The Amazing Race. I love that show too. But anyway, we see as they search for him and they see all his favorite haunts, down below. We see how depraved he truly is. Now, that's, of course, supposed to show that he's not fit to rule. But I got to tell you, having watched a lot of Game of Thrones and knowing a fair amount of actual history, which, of course, one of the reasons people like George R.R. Martin's writing so much is that it is very much drawn from the pages of history, his behavior, unfortunately, seems quite kingly. But anyway, when they finally find Aegon, who had been hidden away by the white worm, Massaria, is she dead, by the way? We're going to talk about that, too. But it turns out he doesn't even want to be king, and he begs to pull a Laenor. That's what we're going to call it, a Laenor. Man, I really hope Laenor returns at some point. It's not looking good for this season. He might maybe return at the end of next week. The season finale. But anyway, Aemond is awfully tempted to grant his wish. And I, too, was wondering, why don't they just let Aegon go? I thought they'd have to kill him, but he wants to leave. Put him on a boat and send him on his way. I'd be like, look up Laenor, and I hope you guys both have a great life. But then, as I continue to watch the show, it dawned on me, this episode, that Aemond might be a better person to be king, yet Aegon is the better person to be a controllable king. What a life lesson to learn. And now I pass it on to you. This was fantastic. You always assume, again, that you would like, you want the most impressive person to be the ruler, right? Aemond is just so cool, and he just seems so great, and he seems to know what he's doing. He said he's been studying for this his whole life. I love the line when he says, when they come looking to put me on the throne, I'll make sure I can be found. I was like, that's great. That's such a great line. It was so great. I like the vulnerability that you and Mitchell showed this week, because Aemond is such a forceful, cool character. I like seeing the facade drop a little bit and, seeing what made him tick too. But kingmakers crown. They're the ones who crown somebody, and they crown those who they can control. So if you want the kingmakers to king you, you better make it clear you're willing to play ball. And this is also echoes what Mysaria says to Otto when negotiating for Aegon. She says, you only have the power that we allow you to have, that we the people allow you to have. I thought that was fantastic. Rhaenys, Daemon, Vaemond, Aemond. I'm seeing a pattern here. These names are all so freaking similar. It's ridiculous. But anyway, they're all aggressive type A personalities, wondering why nobody advocates for them to sit on the Iron Throne. They're all like, I'm so awesome. Why am I not sitting on the Iron Throne? And I think you could even put Rhaenyra in this camp, who, by the way, would rather leave the Red Keep, abandon the Iron Throne and her father's side, assuming it will all just go to plan. What is she, a Bond villain? Larys is totally a Batman villain, by the way, but like a lame one. But anyway, she's like, oh yeah, everyone said I was going to be queen, so I'm just going to run away, and then I'm going to wait for them to call me. Why would they call? I mean, I would prefer that to the misunderstanding that the House of the Dragon team put into place. Why wouldn't they argue, where the heck has Rhaenyra been for the past decade? She ran away to Dragonstone while we have sat here and kept this kingdom together during Viserys' illness. We should continue to rule. That, to me, would make a lot more sense. And it is kind of what they're doing anyway. It just kind of gives them a little bit of a fun. This is the cherry on top of the eruption Sunday. But yeah, Rhaenyra, she should have stayed. She should have stayed and made deals with the people in the Red Keep and played the game. She never should have left. And this mess is as much her fault as Viserys's. They were so focused on things and actions, the crown itself, the Iron Throne, the Red Keep, becoming the ruler. But those things are fixed. Those are not actual things. You're forgetting the living, breathing, changing things, people who surround them. So the lesson here is don't focus on the prize, focus on the guards, on who guards the prize. And that is a really great life lesson. That's fascinating. Never too late to learn a good lesson. Type B personalities, it would seem, are preferable to rule, actually, especially if they come into power politically rather than taking it. Or, I think sometimes you need a type A person who wins over the crowd, but, this show in particular, like the people and the royal subjects never really interact. Although I do believe that'll change going forward as the story progresses. But so far, the people haven't really been a factor here. So sometimes you need someone like that to come in. But I think overall, if a type A person does wish to lead, although I don't think the kingmakers would ever truly trust them, but they better at least try and make it clear that they're a team player and they don't forget their friends. Although I guess it's also the luck of the draw but maybe that's why nobody ever encourages kings and queens to do a better job raising their kids. They're like, I want them to be idiots so that I can control them. That too makes a lot of sense. Fascinating. Although nobody on this show ever seems able to learn anything, including when to pull the trigger. Although I guess that's also true of life. Emotions get in the way. Like when Rhaenys clearly should have burned all the greens to ash when she had the chance. They were all lined up there in a row. It was perfect. But feeling a kinship with Alicent, especially after their conversation, I thought it was a great moment when they locked Rhaenys in her room and waking her up and she was like, what's happening here? I thought that was great. That was so good. It reminded me a little bit of like the story of the Tower of London, which is a real story. Those things that happen, to royalty in their pajamas. It's crazy. But then also the moment when Alicent thought she was going to die and she kind of closed her eyes and she was like, this is it. But then she got a reprieve. And I'm not even sure how Alicent feels about that. But, Rhaenys felt a kinship with Alicent, so she could not kill her, even though she wanted to kill everybody else on that stage. And it was a big mistake. It was a big mistake. All right, so not only is Aegon actually a perfect person to sit on the throne, someone Alicent and all of the Greens can easily control, but we also learn more about why Aegon is the way he is, and that's that he's never felt loved. Oh, that's so cliche. Oh, poor him. But is it cliche? Not in the way I think that they did it here. Because, that is sometimes the reason, like they say, like look at Homelander and his psychopathic behavior. A child raised without love often turns out very odd. And, clearly that is what happened to Aegon. Now, obviously that doesn't excuse his horrible actions, but it does make him more real and therefore a more interesting character. He says his father couldn't possibly have wanted him to be heir because his father didn't love him. So when Alicent, this is fascinating, assures him that, oh yeah, your dad totally said that, Aegon is not moved because it means he will be king, but he is moved because it means that maybe, just maybe, his father actually did love him. And that made it very sad because, of course, now we know that that's not actually what Viserys was saying. So he never loved Aegon. But, you're like, let Aegon believe it, I guess. Maybe it'll make him a little bit of a nicer person. And then he turns and asks his mother if she really loves him. And thankfully, unlike Ray Stans, she knows what to say. I don't think she actually loves her son, but she's not an idiot. So she said, oh, yes, I couldn't even quite tell what she said. I can't get subtitles on the screeners. And I rewound it. I turned it up to top volume. I have no idea what she said to him. But she had a smile on her face and nodded, so it seemed to be affirmative. I was quite moved, not only by that exchange, but what really got me was to see Aegon, a young man who we now realize never knew love, to find himself suddenly caught up in a tidal wave of love when he was crowned. And all the subjects were like, okay, yeah, we love the king. And it was just overwhelming to him. And I thought it was an incredible scene. The whole ceremony was really well done. Nice fancy sword work, by the way. I was like, wow, you're really whipping those swords around. I love it. Nice. The pattern work was impressive. I've never seen sword work like that. I've seen people make like an arch before, but I've never seen all the flourishes with it. I was like, wow, let's go back. Let's walk out that way. Too bad nobody walked out of that room. But anyway, with the voices echoing in that giant chamber, it really felt like you were witnessing history. I was like, this is a good event. But unfortunately, they chose to hold the event in the famed Dragon Pit of King's Landing, or as someone on Reddit jokingly called it, the King's Landing Shopping Outlets and Food Court. Hilarious! It totally looks like the King's Landing Cheesecake Factory. That's exactly what it looks like. Oh my goodness. Anyway, they likely chose to have the ceremony there to underscore that they were House Targaryen, right? But big mistake to have it over the Dragon Pit. But not a big mistake for us, because it was amazing. Because little did they know that one of the twin guards, more twins, this time played by real-life twins, so less expensive. But one of those twins, disgusted by Aegon and everyone betraying Rhaenyra's promised rule and Viserys' wishes, really a lot of this episode battled down to whether or not you believed Viserys would change his mind. It was like being on Twitter. But anyway, this twin decided to help Rhaenys escape the Red Keep by the exact same path that Daemon and Rhaenyra went out on date night. I was like, is there only one secret way out of the Red Keep? This is a huge building. You'd think there'd be multiple secret exits. And if everybody knows about the secret exit, why hasn't anybody closed it up by now or is monitoring it? But anyway, as they tried to get out of the city, the crowds pushed her to witness this ceremony. That was really cool. I like that. I thought there was a lot of tension there. You were like, I hope she doesn't get trampled or her hood falls off. Although apparently there are a lot of bastards with white hair running around town anyway, so I guess she could just be like, yeah, Targaryens, what are you gonna do, man? All right, so anyway, she witnesses the ceremony, and she manages to slip away, having had enough of this farce, and she easily gets down to the dragon pit where her dragon's parked. She's like, meep, meep, oh, there it is. I guess there's no security because how many people can control dragons? But again, there are tons of Targaryen bastards running around, so maybe quite a lot. Maybe they want to put more of a lock on that thing. But today, the only dragon rider that matters is Rhaenys on her dragon Meleys. I think that's how you pronounce it, who we finally see in all her glory. Oh, it was great. Rhaenys looked pretty awesome too with her wearing her armor. That was fantastic. Meleys is pretty flexible for a dragon also. She kind of twisted her body to fit through that door. I thought she was going to crash right through it. But I guess Rhaenys is like, we've already left enough for Rhaenyra to have to clean up when she comes back. So let's try and leave the door intact, I guess. Bottom line, though, this is basically the first shot fired in the Civil War of Dragons. And oh boy, it is thrilling. And it just gives you an idea of how incredible this is going to be if this is just the opening salvo. When Meleys burst through and squashed all those people who, quite frankly, it seemed didn't really care who was king or queen. They're like, we don't care. But anyway, it really did seem like Rhaenyra's wrath. Like, oh, you made Rhaenyra angry. I thought that was great. Rhaenys is a good friend or a good aunt. Yeah, whatever. A good relative. I think the Targaryens, to be safe, should just call everybody relatives. She's a good relative. Forget pretending to kill Laenor. I think Rhaenyra back in the day should have just stomped around on a dragon a couple of times and said, "How do you like me now?" And then maybe then everyone would have feared her. And our civil war in House Targaryen, Greens versus Blacks, begins. Oh, exciting! But how did we get here from that peaceful family dinner on the night of Viserys' death? Again, a misunderstanding that even I misunderstood? This is something new invented by the show, not from the books, that I do not care for. And I'm curious what you think of this change to the lore. I think it's done to make Alicent, be innocent, right? But I think it just makes her actually look foolish, rather than allow her to make her own choices and have some agency. Because she truly believes that that's what she heard. I mean, that's what I heard, so I certainly believe that Alicent hears it. But then she's stuck trying to go and tell everybody what is honestly a very unbelievable story. Hey, guess what, everybody? Right before the king died and no one else heard it, he told me exactly what I wanted to hear, and something that really favors me and my family. I swear! And everyone's like, yeah, right. It's almost like, as I said, the misunderstanding was invented to try and just make Alicent free of any guilt. But the only truly innocent person here is Sir Harold, who resigns his post rather than carry out orders to kill Rhaenyra, who he's known for a large part of her life, if not all of her life, and her whole family. Otto is like, go, kill them all in their sleep. And he's like, I will not. Now, he didn't actually resign. He says he only takes orders from the king or queen, and he'll be back when they decide who that is. But of course, once he leaves, the decision is made to have the loyal Sir Fatal Attraction take over. Oh, Alicent, you sure can pick him. I guess that's who flocks to her, but, wow, she certainly seems to have a type. But it seems the type she'd like to have is Rhaenyra. Now, this is also not in the books, but in interviews, Millie Alcock and Emily Carey, who played the younger versions of these characters, said that they did feel that these two young women, or at least from Alicent's perspective, had a romantic connection. And for the first time, I could see that in the show myself. I was like, oh, I do think she seems to maybe be in love with Rhaenyra. And that's really important and would also speak to her motivations. And I wish that they had sowed those seeds earlier. I mean, it's weird and unfortunate to go from 0 to 60 when it comes to character development for Alicent. Olivia Cooke is very good this episode and continues to have this cool, ethereal look, which I guess fits with her finding religion, which we never really saw, by the way, so that's also a little bit unfortunate. I think we could have used maybe 1 or 2 more episodes. Yet her character, so because of all this, I think her character still seems kind of incomplete. Also because she's still not playing the game for herself, something Rhaenys calls her on and challenges her on and says, why don't you want to sit on the throne? And Alicent doesn't answer, but I believe Alicent feels that a woman cannot win this game, so why even try? Why, and she's like, look what happens to you and look what's probably going to happen to Rhaenyra. I'm fine where I am. Now, for all her crying this episode, did that reveal that Alicent truly did love Viserys in her own way? At first, I thought that maybe it did. I was like, whoa. But the more the episode went on and the more she cried, I came to the conclusion that she was actually crying because as long as Viserys was alive, he was like a buffer. And he kept her from having to make any of these difficult decisions and moves. So now that he is dead, she is finally forced to play the Game of Thrones. And she knows that it is a deadly game. Ooh, but also it's a very kinky one. Hello, Sir Quentin Tarantino. This really came out of nowhere for me, at least. I do not get some dude's fascination with feet, but they really do it for Larys. And I guess that if that's all Sir Larys Strong asks for Alicent to do, I guess she's kind of getting off easy, but I don't know. I think these things also tend to escalate. Although very slowly, I guess, because how long? I mean, this show is moving so quickly that it doesn't seem like that much time has passed, but I mean, it's been what, like a decade and they've only moved up to feet? Maybe he will stay there. And by the way, to be a bee on the wall when they first worked out this arrangement, she's like, what do you want me to do? All right, so anyway, Larys informs Alicent that her father, Otto, has been letting the servants gossip to therefore keep himself, Otto, informed. He uses that network to his own advantage. And that her chambermaid is one of those very servants. But Otto, silly Otto, he is playing checkers while Larys is playing chess. Otto, for instance, has no idea who controls all these spies, or really, who does he think? He just thinks these are some very inquisitive children. But yeah, so anyway, because like when he meets Massaria, he's like, who the heck are you? But anyway, Speaking of the spies within the castle, the shot of that boy walking down the stairs at the beginning, that was incredible. He looked like a little toy soldier. That was just so cool. I don't know if it was the light or if he was walking a little funny, but mechanically, but it was really cool. I was like, that is an incredible shot. And that little child actor did some great physicality. But Larys knows they all work for Mysaria. So when he speaks of killing the queen bee, it's Mysaria he means. He was all over the place with his metaphors. He was like spiders, but now I want to move it to bees because that's my metaphor. And again, as I said, I'm like, what are these sea-level Batman villains? But anyway, sure enough, one of his own bees does sting Mysaria with fire. I'll work with your metaphor, with your theme, Larys, and does the deed. Although Mysaria has so much more to do in the books, and we don't see a body, so I'm not quite sure if Larys succeeded. Or they could transfer that storyline, of course, to another character. On that note, Mysaria's agent, played by Nina Barker Francis, part of me thought she might actually be Nettles, a vital character in the chapters ahead, but she's listed as a character named Jane, so probably not, but she made such a strong impression here and had so much dialogue that it would seem weird not to keep her around, unless, of course, she also perished in that fire. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think it's weird we didn't see anybody actually perish. And I would think that Mysaria would have her own secret exits in her compound. Finally, let's talk about bending the knee, one of our favorite phrases from Game of Thrones, made famous by Daenerys. She practically had t-shirts made. If they had t-shirts, she would have had them made in the final seasons of Game of Thrones. Now here I was surprised how many people seemed unaware of the saying, live to fight another day. I mean, when Daenerys was arguing with people, they had a little bit more of a choice, which is why she had to argue with them. But here, it didn't seem like they were really giving people much of a choice. I was like, you're not going to be able to help anybody if you've been struck down. Bend the knee for now. You can always stand back up. I actually LOL'd when that third dude, seeing the first two be taken away, bent the knee. But then he messed up. He was doing so good. He tried to run out of there. They were really slow opening that gate. No wonder they caught up to him. He should have been like, is there just a door I can walk through? I'll leave my horse. I'll come back for this. Here's my claim ticket. I'll be back. They're like, he couldn't have abandoned us. He left his horse. But anyway, I don't know why he was trying to get out of there like that, because he never would have been able to get to Rhaenyra in time anyway. So he should have just stuck around, pretended that he was loyal, and then had told her eventually. But he did not play the Game of Thrones well. And then that guy on the small council, he also did not play the Game of Thrones well. He felt somehow, even though he was clearly outvoted by everyone else in the room, that he could just shout moralities at them, and they would be like, you're right, we're ashamed. Let's do what you say. I'm like, what do you think's going to happen to you, buddy? But nobody expected to happen that way, with Sir Criston Cole so recklessly doing him in. He's truly unhinged. Truly unhinged. That's why he is Sir Fatal Attraction. He has earned that name, that moniker. And I think that's what caught everybody else off guard, what freaked everybody out, that he was so out of control. If he had just struck that guy down with the sword, I think people would have been like, we all saw that coming. So, like Daemon did with Vaemond. That worked in the context of what was going on. But here, everybody was like, Cole's just nuts. Because that guy was the one guy standing in everyone's way. So that was definitely a foregone conclusion. But as I said, no one expected it to go down that way. I wish the blood had just continued to pool during the meeting and maybe dripped off the edge of the table. But it was still, the way they did it was very cool. So that's the second to last episode of season 1. One more to go! And it's apparently so amazing that HBO will not release it to press in advance. They want us all to experience it at the same time, so experience it at the same time we shall. I'll be doing a live watch-along for the season finale next Sunday, October 23rd at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I hope that you will join me. I can't wait. It's going to be dragonific. I believe that next week, just like we focused on the greens this week, we'll focus on the blacks. And then we'll be all set for season 2, where the two sides go dragon to dragon. Oh, it's going to be good. So what do you think of this second to last episode of House of the Dragon season 1? From the explosive moments to the quieter ones. Do you think they did a good job making us better understand the greens and Aemond, Aegon and Aemond, etc.? And what'd you think of Rhaenys on Meleys? Am I saying it correct? It seems crazy to me that their names would rhyme. I guess maybe it would make kind of sense, but it's weird to say. All right, so anyway, share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.